Hello and welcome to episode 10 of deValiante Plays As We Know It by Jaime Scribbles Games. This visual novel was part of Itch.io's bundle for racial justice and equality. This visual novel contains strong language and mature themes that may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised. Now, without further ado, let's get started. I got up and headed out to grab a cup of coffee before work. It was just another day at the security force. Nobody freaking cares. Because all it does is just keep going. Same old. It's just a daily grind. And all we really care about is me going to the library and talking to Trevor and Brian and seeing what their relationship is like. Anyway, we're going to roll the dice because God hates me. We're going to Icarus. I walked in and saw Gloria sitting at the bar. She was slightly hunched over and her back turned to as many people as possible. I couldn't help but wonder if she was in a bad mood. Probably. Go say hi. Hi, Gloria. Diva. What? I'm sorry. I've actually got to go. She stood up, gave me an apologetic smile, and left. Alright, bye. I watched her after her for a moment before sitting at the bar and ordering a drink. I couldn't help but feel a little confused, but Sam spoke up. If she sits at the bar, don't bother her, because then she always leaves. I see. Don't make that face. Come on, you'll bring down the whole mood. Right. Sorry, Sam. Sam gave me my drink and we made small talk for a while. It was night again. I got up and headed to grab a coffee work. Nothing is happening. I sat at the desk filling out all the paperwork. It was to the point now that I did it without really thinking about it. I just had to transfer lots of notes and reports to neat little files. It was tedious, but it was helpful when we had to look up something. At least it would be if we ever had to do it. I never had to go back and look through old forms. But if I did, I'd probably appreciate the effort. I sighed and sipped on a cup of coffee. One of the perks of working here was free coffee. Back to work. And now work was over. Let's see, what do we want? We want the Trevor and Brian show. We're going to the gym, apparently. Let's go talk to Tabby. Hang out with Tabby. I sat next to Tabby and she handed me an old workbook. I brought some paper so you could practice. Just read the directions and I'll help you if you get stuck. Geometry. You'll learn some basic formulas concerning shapes. Wow, okay. I went through the very tiring process of wrapping my head around this fancy math. I wasn't completely sure how this would ever help me unless I needed to build giant triangles or measure shadows. I was starting to think that Tabby was really lonely. I never saw her with kids her own age, and there were a few here. In fact, I never saw her with anyone except her dad. It made me think of me and Mom. On the surface, I had really kept my distance. Other people were dangerous. She's growing up in this safe place, though. I wanted to ask what was up, but last time I saw her in the gym, she looked really upset. But I didn't want to bring it up in case it upset her again. Eventually she'll tell me if she wants to. No point in trying to force her. I wasn't her big sister or mom. After a while, Tabby left to go home, and I went back home too. Maybe I could ask Mom what she thought about it later. If I ever saw my mother again. Time for bed. Hey, we finally got 2 stars with Tabby. But we're going to be BFFs with Trevor. I promise. I got up and headed to grab a copy of work. And it's just another day in the security force and nobody cares. Go away. Alright. Time to kill. Brian and Trevor show. No, we're going to the gym. Okay. Hey, Gloria's here. I walked in and saw Gloria walking slowly along the track. Hey, Gloria. Hey, I didn't know you were into fitness. I am, I guess. It's always a good skill to have. That's good. That's good. We felt quiet, but I got the strong feeling that she was waiting for me to continue the conversation. I should say something, but what? I don't like any of these options. 1 and 2 is flirt. 4 and 5, or wait, 3 and 4. Yeah, that's how numbers work. 3 and 4 is that brag about yourself, which is terrible. 5 and 6 is just work out. Please give me 5 and 6. Yes! The best option. I gave her a friendly wave and went back to what I had come to do. Nobody cares. I got up and headed to grab a cup of coffee before work. Please tell me that something is going on today. Nope! Oh, wait. I walked into work and saw Tabby following her dad around. I checked my assignment for the day, but as I did, Vince called a general meeting. He stood towards the center of the room and spoke in a loud, booming voice. You all know Tabby. She's here for her career education, so everyone welcome the future officer. I think she'd probably be a better botanist, Dad. Tabby started to squirm and gollered at her dad. Dad? I'm just messing with you, Tabby Cat. You can do any job you want to, as long as it's an officer of the security force. There were good-natured chuckles all around the room, and Tabby seemed placated, but still annoyed. Whatever. Okay, everyone, get back to work. With that, everyone returned to what they were doing, though as I got ready for my daily job, I couldn't help but watch Tabby and Vince interact. Watching them sometimes gave me a cold feeling in my gut that I assumed was a tiny bit of jealousy. I shouldn't be that way, though. I had Mom, and poor Tabby only had her dad. It wasn't like she was getting something I wasn't. Maybe I just missed the father I never knew. I sighed, feeling bad about my thoughts and frustrated that I was even thinking them. I rubbed the bridge of my nose and forced my feet to move. Working would get my mind off of those things. There was always piles of mind-numbing paperwork to do, and that sounded perfect right now. And now it's over. Brian and Trevor show. Brian and... Why are we going to the gym? Jude better be there, I swear to God. Alright, let's go hang out with Tabby. I approached Tabby, but she wasn't alone. An older girl was towering over her with her arms over on her hips. For a moment, I was confused, but then it dawned on me. Tabby was getting picked on. I frowned and started to walk over to the intent to break it up. Before I took more than a step, Tabby swung and punched the taller girl in the jaw. My mouth fell open, and the would-be bully backed away with a yelp. Good on you, Tabby. The older girl looked ready to pounce. Tabby took a stance like a proper fighter. Shit's about to get crazy. I'm gonna roll for it. 4. Let Tabby kick the girl's ass. I stood and watched, but froze when a voice echoed through the gym. Tabitha, Layla, you two stop right there. I turned, feeling caught red-handed despite having not done anything yet. The older girl's eyes widened and she fled. Tabby's shoulders fell and she walked over. I should probably tell Vince what I saw. Dad! I expect better out of you, Tabby. It's not her fault. The girl was messing with her. It was self-defense. Diva, this isn't the point. I'm so sick of this. You never listen to me. She stormed out of the gym, ignoring her father as he tried to make her stop. What's all that about? Vince sighed and glanced at me suspiciously. Don't worry about it, Diva. He left to chase after her, and I was left with questions and no answers. I gave up and headed back home. I was getting late and I was tired, time for bed. Hey, I got more stars with Tabby. Let's go get some coffee before work, where nothing ever happens. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, let's have some time to kill. Let's see. Brian and Trevor show. Brian. Fine, whatever. Let's at least try to get 3 stars with. Never mind, the Brian and Trevor show is happening in here. When I walked in, I was immediately held by Brian. Diva, have a drink with me. I walked over and looked around, but didn't see a trace of Trevor. Probably because he doesn't drink. Where? So, how are you adjusting to life underground? Oh, fine, I guess. The surface is a harsh place. He picked up a glass with clear liquid and swirled it around for a moment before taking a careful drink. Yeah. Camden is an oasis, right? Sanctuary. His words were a bit slurred. You're drunk, my sir. How much have you had to drink? The library is a nice place. I nodded. He wasn't really listening to me. Let him talk. Library. The books, you know? It should be dusty in there, but it's not, though. I nodded, and he continued. Trevor dusts it, you know? He dusts it. He doesn't like people, but he likes books. Sometimes I don't like people either. You know? I nodded, and he seemed satisfied by my reaction and continued. I like Trevor, though. He nodded and then laughed. Time to go. Aw, Sam. Time to go. Brian deflated and left under Sam's glare. He doesn't come here often, but I swear. She rolled her eyes and walked away, leaving me with so many questions. Brian was a strange drunk. Tomorrow's a free day, probably where Micah is going to come and invade my space. I was browsing books in the library when someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned and saw Micah with a big grin on his face. Diva, look. He pushed a book into my hands and seemed to want me to look inside of it. I looked at him curiously, but opened the book and started to page through it. I couldn't read the words. It was in some other language. I had no way of reading. I glanced back up to Micah, confused. I can't read this language. Neither can I, but look. He pointed back at the book, so I turned a few pages. I stopped and saw a beautiful illustration. Some kind of foreign artwork, if I had to guess. It looked like it was in a museum, and there were dozens of close-ups. It's about art? Micah nodded. I've never bothered with books in another language before, but I thought why not and started to page through this. I might be able to translate some of the words, thanks to the images. Oh? I handed the book back to him, and he flipped to a page he had marked with a scrap of paper. He pointed at some of the words under a photo. Apple. I'm sure of it. That word means apple. La pomme? Yes. I smiled, but I didn't really understand why he was so excited. We had no way of knowing if he was right. Do you know what this could mean? I shook my head. I'm sure he could tell I wasn't following. If I can start to translate this language, then I might be able to translate others. It opens up so many more books. That does sound... Books are just so rare. He laughed and held the book to his chest. I forget. I still haven't shown you my collection. You have books in other languages? Yes, but there are no pictures. I'm going to compare them to this and see if I can work out more words. Then I'm glad you found that book. Micah looked down at his book and he smiled. His smile weakened. He suddenly looked wistful. I love books. They mean a great deal to me. You can learn so much about the people from the past from them, and it's relaxing to escape into these fictional worlds for a time. I really wish I could put this feeling into proper words, if only to explain it to you. He slowly looked back up at me, meeting my eyes. His expression was a complex mix of emotions that I couldn't make sense of, but he looked sad. I reached out and placed a hand gently on his cheek and tried to decipher what was going on inside of his head. He froze and his features became clearly surprised at my sudden touch. I pulled my hand back and smiled to hide some embarrassment. Well, you just seemed... I thought maybe I could comfort you, I guess. He sighed and cocked his head slightly. You're very sweet, Diva. Please, next time you have free time, come to my home. I want to show you my books. I'll make us some coffee and snacks and everything. I nodded and tried to shake the embarrassment. It wasn't the first time he had mentioned such a thing, but it was the first direct invitation to visit him. Thank you, Micah. I will. I guess that's our next weekend. We took up our books to Trevor is a treasure. We took our books to Trevor, and then Micah insisted he walk me home. We made small talk, but I was distracted wondering what his home looked like. Would it be built similar to mine? Just how many books did he own? We'll find out next week. We're still only at one heart with Micah, but we've been spending like all of this time with him. Mom! I rolled over and saw Mom already up and dressed. She sat at the table and was reading over something. Is it time to go already? Not quite, but soon. What are you reading? Just some notes, nothing that important. I'm just trying to wake myself up. She turned and gave me a small smile. Something was bothering her, but I knew if I asked, she would deny it. I got out of bed and got ready. I sat with her and we ate some fruit before leaving. I grabbed a cup of coffee and sat towards the back of the room. I kept my eye out for Micah and tried to keep the seat beside me open just in case. The mayor walked up onto the stage and I leaned back in my chair. Let the fancy speeches edited by my mother begin. Before he could step up to the podium, however, everything went black. I sat up and looked around. Everyone began to speak, shout, and question. Why had all the lights gone off? I heard a few voices shout to remain seated, so I did, but the speakers crackled and I expected the intercom to tell us what had happened. I didn't recognize the voice that spoke out of the speakers, though. What must we do to make the mayor listen? I have family up there. I know I'm not the only one. Tell the mayor to open the doors. Help us make him listen. We refuse to live in luxury while our families starve and suffer on the surface. Join us or put your own comfort before the lives of children. Your choice. I knew people were upset by the storm, but doing this? I felt someone sit beside me in the dark. My eyes were starting to adjust so I could just make out that it was Micah. Diva, I'm glad I managed to find you before the lights went out. It was difficult to navigate through the crowd to get to you. Me too. Is this crazy or what? It's alarming. I just hope everyone stays calm so there aren't any injuries. My eyes are just adjusting to the dark. Good. Be sure to shade them when the lights return, or at least try. I'm not sure if we'll have a lot of warning. Probably not. I just can't believe that someone would go to such extremes. This is very worrisome. It's not good for there to be so much discontent. Do you think a lot of people feel the same way, though? It's hard to say. Some time has passed, but there had to be a few people to pull something off like this. It couldn't have been a lone individual. I don't like seeing this. Nothing good ever comes from this kind of defiant behavior. It's not as if I would praise our mayor, but he's the one who has to make these decisions. If they're in the best interests of Camden, it seems logical. There must have been a better way. Maybe if the mayor had been more open to listening to them. I shook my head and Micah sighed. This is all very unfortunate. The unrest really puts a strain on my nerves. There are no easy solutions. I wish people could understand that. It's hard when you're emotional, I guess. I shrugged and chewed on my lip. It appears I'm not the only one influenced by these matters. Micah lifted a hand to my chin and tapped gently under my lip. Be careful not to draw blood. Perhaps a distraction? I reread a favorite book of mine last night and caught something I hadn't noticed before. A slight clue to a twist that had originally shocked me. Oh? How many times have you read it? Well, dozens. That's why it surprised me so much. I can't believe such a thing slipped my attention all those times. Is it a good twist? Yes, I would lend it to you, but I fear I've already spoiled it by mentioning the existence of a twist. I hadn't thought of that. It's alright. I think I'll survive. Luckily for you, a doctor is nearby. He chuckled. I'm sorry, I'm bad at telling jokes. The light suddenly blinked on and I had to rub my eyes, but ultimately was relieved. When I could see again, I saw the mayor walk back up to the stage. Someone in a security uniform was speaking to him quietly while he nodded. Then he faced the room, and finally a quiet fellow in the crowd. What would he say now? The one who illegally hijacked the intercom system has been caught and will be dealt with, as will all who continue to disrupt the peace in Camden. I was a bit startled by that threat. I glanced around. I wasn't the only one. He seemed to pick up on the unease because I saw him take a breath. The safety of every single one of you is my top priority, and always will be. Anyone who threatens you, my citizens, will have to answer to me. We will not be threatened or put in danger because of some outliers and their dangerous lies. He gripped the podium and glanced briefly at my mother. She nodded. I have made several attempts to contact the surface and to learn of the town's fate. They had all been met with silence. I had originally planned to discuss this with the interested parties individually and privately, but it would seem I have no choice. I have a plan in place to check on things, but it must be done carefully. There were reports of Sandman gangs moving into the area. We have to be safe. I felt my chest tighten. Sandmen, close. That made things so much more complicated, and it made sense. They would want to take advantage of the wreckage to see what they could extract from it. Who they could extract from it. It was brief, but I caught my mother and the mayor exchange looks. It dawned on me that she had known. Of course she would know all this insider information. It shocked me a bit that she would keep it from me. I tried not to feel a bit betrayed, but ever since we came down here, we had grown apart. It was never clearer to me than it was now. I said a hasty goodbye to Micah and got out of there. I needed to go home and to think. I crawled into bed and hugged a book to my chest. My mind was buzzing, and I considered trying to read and forget everything. Things were starting to change. I couldn't be sure how, but with the unrest in Camden and my mother's close ties to the mayor, everything was getting increasingly complicated. I supported what the mayor had done. It was the best choice for all of Camden, but now not everyone saw it that way. With the Sandman thrown into the mix, things might start to get dangerous. I groaned and covered my face. For my own sake, I had to try to take all of this slowly, just one small thing at a time. Right now, I needed to calm down. Everything else could wait. I didn't have the energy to leave, so I sat around until I was able to finally concentrate on the book in my hand. It was getting late and I was tired. Time for bed. How's my stress level? Oh, wow. My stress level is actually the same. Interesting. Thank you for joining me for episode 10 of As We Know It by Jaime Scribbles Games. The next episode will be out shortly. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment letting me know what you like down below. Please no hate or spoilers, as I'm not above removing those comments and the people who make them. That's all for now, folks, and I'll see you next time.